Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid. That's me, Heather Box. Please share and subscribe to these videos if you enjoy them. So I'm going to combine my two favourite things today, film and music. So I'm going to talk about film composers. Such an important part of the film going, the film viewing process, and a really important layer in the film experience. But a few guys whose stuff I like or I'm aware of that did make the cut for my top 10. You know, you've got the great Max Steiner, the pre-war composer, who basically kind of started the whole film composition thing. His style of film composition has been copied, and he's kind of like the Jimi Hendrix, the Eddie Van Halen, the guy who kind of starts the thing, so to speak. The Buddy Rich, you know. And then one of his contemporaries, Eric von Korngold, who again, he did the Errol Flynn films. You know, there wouldn't be action adventure scores without his stylistic ways. So these two guys, I think more than the other, are like the two kind of big titans of the early days of scoring films properly. Obviously in the silent era, yeah, you'd get the kind of piano and in the theatre, and you know, we get the diminished 7 arpeggio going up the piano when the girls tied it to the train tracks. But you know, these guys made it into an art form. It's basically almost the classical music of our era. And when people go to concert recitals, you know, quite often film music's included, and these guys will be, you know, a couple who are very highly rated. You get guys like Dimitri Tomkin, Mikos Rosa, who's great, did all the biblical epics, and again, you know, he made that his style. A guy I like who's not as well known but is really cool is Jerry Fielding. So he did Sam Peckinpah's films. He did the Outlaw Josie Wales, Clint Eastwood's great western. He's got a great style. It's orchestral, but he's got an interesting use of kind of brass, and it's a little bit calmer, almost avant-garde. It's not as melodic, you know, and it works for those kind of revisionist westerns. And then Elmer Bernstein, very versatile film composer, a great big country theme of his. And then, of course, he did The Great Escape, which I love. Great thing about The Great Escape film as well is the underscoring in the tunneling sequences and the more horrible parts of where people are shot and stuff like that is really good. He gets a great mix in that. Then you got Henry Mancini as well. It's that great Pink Panther theme. I still teach that to kids today. Absolutely brilliant. Angelo Badalamenti, great work with David Lynch. Think about the Twin Peaks theme for the TV show. It's just a minor 6 to a 5th. No. That's all it is. Genius. Then Howard Shaw's and all, and he's interested in his Cronenberg stuff. You know, it's a lot smaller scale. And then he ends up doing Lord of the Rings. I like his scores for David Fincher as well. They're very different. Like Seven's a great score because it's just not melodic at all. It's just oppressive. You know, it's just oppressive orchestrations and brass and so on. But his Crash score's interesting as well. He uses electric guitar, kind of jangly electric guitar. It's quite a big part of it. So a lot of these guys can be experimental. And then the great Alfred Newman, the older composer, his son Thomas Newman, absolutely brilliant in American Beauty, and The Shawshank would be two scores that really people would know and would stand out in people's minds. So that's you know, there's other guys, you know, Danny Elfman, Elliot Goldenthal, sorry, you know, Alan Silvestri, James Horner, James Newton Howard. You know, they've all done some great music, but the top 10 is going to be this, so I'll go for it. So coming in number 10, this guy is entering here really based on one piece of music. I've got to be honest, and I could not have him in there because it's not only is a great piece of music, the score's fantastic for films, one of my favourite films of all time, but he's the World War II British guy, and it's Ron Goodwin. So of course his most famous score, or two of his most famous themes, of 633 Squadron and Battle of Britain, superb. But obviously his most famous one, which I was going to say before I said that, is Where Eagles Dare. So I love the music to this. It's a great example of the music making the film so much better. And Where Eagles Dare is a great film, I love it, but I'm under no illusions it's boys' own action. It's kind of, hey, war's great. It's got ridiculous casting where all the actors are far too old to be in World War II, as it'd be people half their age. But the opening shot of the plane and that fantastic military drum pattern, the strings climb, suggesting the mountain, suggesting the eagle, as it were. And you got a fantastic picture on the cable car, and the whole underscoring is very impressionist, suggesting the kind of height they're at. You know, he's almost he's kind of using tumbling strings, things like that. So, you know, he's been quite literal with the score. I love it. It's one of the great pieces of film music. So that's my number 10 choice. Number 9 guy coming in, principally for his work with Brian De Palma and his Italian Pino Donaggio. So one of his early scores was really great and successful was Don't Look Now. Great 1973 horror thriller, psychic thriller with Julie Christie, Donald Sutherland, directed by Nick Rogue. If you haven't seen this film, it's superb. Donaggio's style is romantic. He's kind of like Morricone, obviously his Italian influence, but he's going for the full orchestration, but there's an aching romanticism to his style. And he does this really well with Carrie, you know, the opening scene in the shower in slow-mo. Really, really sentimental and gentle. He does Dress to Kill. But I think his masterpiece is De Palma's Blowout. And I think the main theme for Blowout is one of the great pieces of film music. It's impossibly sad. I don't think I've heard a sadder piece of film music. And it underscores the you know, the kind of denouement of the film really kind of fits in with that. So if you've not seen Blowout, watch it and listen to how that music works. Okay, my next choice is the modern master. This is the guy, probably more than anyone else, who has taken on the mantle of the previous greats, and he's probably the film composer who's most well known now. And he kind of sometimes gets brought in just to do a superhero theme and someone else to do the score, you know, and it's Hans Zimmer. So the first time I really noticed Zimmer's work was on Crimson Tide. I went to the pictures to see that when it came out. Enjoyed it, still enjoyed the film. But what was interesting about it was two things. He used these kind of big vocal male voices in almost Russian, Eastern European kind of way, which I really like. But I sort of got the impression of it as well. This is using samples. I kind of realised, and I could be wrong, but I sort of thought, hey, this guy's using technology to do this score, and that's playing a big part. And obviously his background's pop, and what's happened with film scoring in recent times, because of music technology, you don't have to get schooled guys who know how to write the dots like a John Williams or a Morricone, who are like really schooled guys. You know, you can basically play the notes and it'll play it back and it'll score it for you. And then you can send it to an orchestrator, arranger to kind of do extra work, you know. So I suspect kind of Zimmer's from that background. Forget what his sort of pop music background is. But he's actually, I just watched Rain Man again the other day, and it's interesting he did the score for that, and that's a completely different kind of score, you know, using different elements. Obviously really broke big with the Batman scores for Nolan, but prior, I think Gladiator was another step up for him, you know, getting the Roman epic, and obviously he'd done Crimson Tide, which was Tony Scott's film, so I think Ridley must have seen that. Whether he did Ridley stuff before, I'm not sure. Yeah, that was a massive step up, and it had that kind of canvas for a film composer. You know, I mentioned about Nikos Rose and Ben-Hur and so on. You know, it's such a great opportunity, but also had a lovely theme for Russell Crowe as well when obviously his wife's been murdered, and that was a really good counterpoint. But recently, stuff with Nolan, I think, again, this is something that didn't used to happen in the past. You had film composers that go from job to job to job, and then you start to get that thing where a composer will work with a film director, and they will become synonymous with that particular filmmaker. Now, I think he scores for Nolan. You've got to say Inception, Tenet, Interstellar, and what's it called? Dunkirk. It's really kind of, it's virtually music going all the way through on some bits, virtually all the way through the film, I think. And they use that kind of rhythmic, propulsive thing. Sometimes it's hard to hear the dialogue, you know, the music is absolutely integral to the movement of the images. So Zimmer, yeah, you know, it's good to have someone modern in, but you can't deny what the guy's doing. And yeah, I think he's doing, he'll have done the Bond. By the time you watch this video, he'll have done a new Bond film. Hopefully we'll have seen it, and I hope it's good. So my number 7 choice is, he's also a filmmaker. He's a director, it's John Carpenter. So I think John Carpenter, you know, it's quite unusual putting a filmmaker in, but I just think his key scores are so good. I think he's the first guy that showed you can, if you've got some musical skill, you're a musician, but you're not schooled, you can use technology to create really interesting and vital film music. And obviously Salt and Precinct, Halloween, The Fog, Christine would all be examples. Even Morricone's score for The Thing kind of feels Carpenter-esque in a way. And that's saying something. That's the biggest credit you can pay to Carpenter, that Morricone's come in and kind of taken on board the Carpenter style. But yeah, I've seen John Carpenter play live with his band, and yeah, he's just a kind of basic keyboard player. So I don't even think he probably plays piano properly, but he's got music in him, and you know. I mean, again, these things are simple. You know, Halloween is a fifth to a root. Then it goes to the minor six. It's that David Lynch thing again before. Okay, it's in a funny time series. I think it's 5/4. It is. And that's unsettling, but the idea is just simple, and all the best motifs in music are. Next one, this guy's done as brilliant for his TV work as he is his film. And it's Lalo Schifrin. So obviously Bullet, Dirty Harry, Magnum Force, Enter the Dragon, fantastic scores. And then his Mission Impossible music and other TV themes he did. This guy's just great the way he uses electric guitar. He's kind of in that 60s thing where you got guys like him, Quincy Jones, John Barry. They're bringing in the modern instrumentation, Morricone as well, into the orchestration as well. But I love his strings, like on the Dirty Harry, when you kind of got the wah-wah going, it breaks down those, those high strings. Really cool, kind of, sort of I mean, he did I checked his filmography, and he continued doing stuff and does into the 80s, 90s and so on, but it just feels like that late 60s, 70s times, the real picture. He did other Don Siegel stuff, he did Charlie Varick as well, some really good stuff, Starsky and Hutch, I think he did some stuff on that, excellent, love Lalo Schifrin, that Bullet, boom, bam, boom, and then fucking brilliant. Okay, so my number 5 choice, I think we're starting to step up now. I think the difference between the guys I've mentioned, Zimmer aside, and the guys coming on now, these are heavy hitters. These guys have done so many fucking scores, and you've heard their music. This next guy's not, I would say, style's not as indelible as the other ones. You could spot the other guys. You maybe not, this guy's pretty versatile, but some of his scores are really interesting how they developed through the 60s, 70s and 80s, and it's Jerry Goldsmith. So, I mean, a couple of early Goldsmith scores, which I think are really fucking cool, is his score for Freud, the John Huston film. I think there was he got some music used on that he didn't give permission for, I read. But then his first really cool one, and it uses kind of church organ, it's really gothic, is John Frankenheimer's Seconds from 1966. If you've not seen this film, it's flawed, but it's still fucking really good cult film. And Goldsmith's score is brilliant, and the way it interacts with the images, the credit sequence is brilliant. And then he just knocks out of the park one of the all-time great musical scores, which is Planet of the Apes. The experimentation with the instrumentation that both suggests sort of the alien planet, but something sort of tribal as well. Really good. Just so bold, and then a lot of the orchestrations in that tend to be quite kind of atonal blasts, of music to suggest tension. But then he does the score, one of the all-time great scores for Chinatown, and he brings out a lovely kind of smooth jazz to that, but orchestrated. The main theme of Chinatown, I mean, if you watch those credits, it's just pure gold. And he kind of mirrored that with LA Confidential in 1997 as well. If you listen to the scoring on that, you can hear the Chinatown sound. That's why Curtis Hanson probably hired him to do that. So I love those. Then he did do some scoring for Alien, but I think controversially, there's some other guy took over. The other thing he's synonymous with is the Omen, which is quite interesting, like another filmmaker I'm going to mention, a bit of composer. The main Omen theme, you tend to know the kind of Dominate thing. That's kind of what the film's known for, I think, really, in terms of the musical score. So he's great with that. And then the other thing is the Star Trek films. I think he did the first 5. I'm not sure, I'll have to check that. Obviously, there's the first 6 ones, that's the original crew. So whether he dropped out of one of those, but really good. He kind of took this original Star Trek theme, I guess, and took the idea of that and then expanded it into the Star Trek films, it's great. I mean, the space scenes, if you had to sort of pick a composer who kind of is like the space scene man, I mean, Jerry Goldsmith's like a really good guy to go to. Obviously, like John Williams and John Barry both did space scenes before him, but I think Goldsmith's got an amazing touch with that. And then a couple of late entries that I think are really good that shows his skill. I think Total Recall's amazing. The main theme for that's incredible. Those credits, dun, 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 brilliant. I love that. And an example, like a kind of pretty good 90s action flick, executive decision is made better. And Air Force One, I think Jerry Goldsmith does that. They're made better by Goldsmith scoring. The Rambo films, I mean, you know, the B movies really, and then you get this class composer in, and like the kind of themes for First Blood, really good, and then it kind of makes the other two Rambo films, which are pretty tacky by comparison, seem really classy. Brilliant. Okay, pardon me, I'm itching. I'm going to have a bit of coffee. So the next four guys, these are the big four, and these, you know, I wouldn't say on any given day they could be interchangeable, but if someone came up to me and went, Ed, you're wrong, that guy should have been number one, I will not dispute that. I won't dispute it. Okay, so number 4, I'm going for John Williams, the most successful film composer of all time. I think he's had 50 Oscar nominations. Williams, prior to his important collaboration, which we'll come to, he does quite a lot. There's a lot of scores he does. I mean, if I just get my... Sorry, I should have put this up before. I'm just putting this on my computer. So prior to his big team up, which we'll come to, he did a lot of stuff. Let me just check that. I'm just looking for... hold on, here we are. It'll come. Right, here it comes. And... yeah, okay. I should cut this out, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it up. So yeah, he's kind of doing... he does TV stuff like Time Tunnel and things like that. Goodbye Mr. Chips. Story of Woman, Jane Eyre, Fiddler on the Roof. The Cowboys. The Poseidon Adventure. That's probably like one of his first big hits. Where I would imagine he would have, started to come to the attention more of his key collaborator. He's weird, he's done Images, Robert Altman, Long Goodbye, so again, he's working in the new Hollywood. So again, that kind of ties in with where he's going to... He does Earthquake as well, very soapy, what's it called? Disaster film. Towering Inferno as well, again, a big hit. And then... Sugarland Express is the first one we did with Steven Spielberg, so that's, not a big hit. It's a good film, but then he does Jaws, and that's probably... Is that the most famous piece of film music ever? I think it probably is, maybe apart from another bit. Actually, I think Jaws is maybe more famous. So, the main theme, that's got an ostinato, so it's just a repeating... It's a 3-note motif, but if you went dun 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 and just did those 2 notes, people will know what it is, but it goes dun 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 dun. So this uses the Phrygian mode. So that's the first port of call. What's interesting about it, because the Phrygian mode has a semitone dun dun, whereas a minor scale or major scale dun dun starts with a tone. So that gave it an unusual sound that the audiences or a layman listener wouldn't be used to, and I think that's what's attractive about the score. But he does really cool stuff with the underwater bits as well on Jaws. So when it's underwater, he's got this cool arpeggio, which is moving up a tritone. Stuff like that. Yeah, then you've got the kind of adventure score that he does when they're out on the ocean. Really good. I mean, looking here, he did the Missouri Breaks, he did Family Plot, Last Hitchcock, and then in 1977 he does Star Wars. Again, that Star Wars fanfare is just so awesome when it appears on screen. Even when you go and see the new Star Wars films, only one thing that's not disappointing is the Star Wars fanfare. Great. His peak Star Wars score is Han and Leia. Superb. Empire Strikes Back, sorry, the Han and Leia theme, I think, being one of the great bits of that. Close Encounters, beautiful score, the way he uses Wish Upon a Star. Very sentimental, but really good. Superman, all his themes are kind of similar. He used a fifth going up, or da 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 da, fifth going down, da da, fifth going up, da 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 da. E.T. What's better? Slightly different that, but his Superman score. He didn't actually do Superman 2, but he did the main theme. Raiders, I just sung the theme, amazing. He's done other stuff, but principally it's Spielberg stuff. With quite interesting collaboration with Oliver Stone. That kind of brings out the darker side of him. Really cool scores for JFK, Nixon, Born on the 4th of July. I think Schindler's List is one of his great scores. His filmography is mental, but principally all the stuff he does is Spielberg. After the fact, just The Patriot, that's the last non-Spielberg film he did, apart from Memoirs of a Geisha. So, yeah, I mean, look at his filmography, it's pretty incredible. So that's John Williams. Apologies for that break in the middle there, but I just had to get that up. Okay, so let's go to our next choice. So this guy could easily be my number one. Again, I'm actually just going to get his list up so we can just refer a bit. So it's John Barry, the great James Bond composer. People who know me might be surprised that he's not number one, and like maybe he should be. I'm just it's just one of those things. John Barry, amazing. Mix. He started off as a kind of jazz influenced jazz player, kind of composing for the John Barry 7, which was a kind of a pop instrumental group, but with orchestrations and jazz inflections. And then he gets the Bond gig, rearranges the James Bond theme. The rest is history. I think, again, with Barry's music so famous, I mean, his James Bond scores an example of where the music's so important and make the films better. Bond films can be a bit hacky at times, can be a bit cheap, some of the effects and that. And like something like the space scenes in You Only Live Twice, but when he is going up, when his music pipes up, it's just it just sends it into another dimension. Sorry, I'm just looking for. He's got Bond films. Right, there's his scores. Sorry. His Bond peak is on Her Majesty's Secret Service for me, but all his Bond scores are good. They never sit below a level. But if you look at his other scores, the Crest File's amazing. The Quiller Memorandum is really cool. Petulia, the Richard Lester film, that's got a really weird score. And that's an odd film, and his music's amazing. Deadfall, he actually composes a piece for an orchestra in that to be filmed in the film, and he's conducting it. It's really cool. Lion in Winter, he won the Oscar for that. That uses choral score, amazing. Last Valley, again, that uses the same thing as the Lion in Winter. I think that was one of his favourites he did, actually. Midnight Cowboy, we know that. That and Born 3, he does the song Born 3 and the score. They're sort of interesting, Walkabout, amazing. Let me just go down. King Kong, interesting. There's a point in the sort of mid to late 70s where he basically starts kind of taking the money. His agent's obviously like, right, they'll give you $1 million to do this, John. And I think the reason for that was his music's so good that he can make a film that's problematic, or maybe when they're watching the execs are going like, oh, this isn't that great, let's get John Barry. And I think there's an example of that, as obviously King Kong mentioned, there's The Deep. These are all flawed films, but Game of Death, like the Bruce Lee that was finished after his death. One of my faves is The Black Hole. Now, if you watch the film The Black Hole, it's Disney's attempt to get on the Star Wars bandwagon. But Barry's music is just way, way better than the film deserves. There's an amazing ending where the main black hole thing comes in, and then the character played by Maximilian Schell, which is kind of the sort of Dr. Moreau type figure, Forbidden Planet Wattle Pigeon type figure. His robot Maximilian, they enter the black hole, and it's really biblical. It's quite not biblical's the word. The guy who does the 7 levels of hell. I don't know. But then he did Somewhere in Time after that as well. Again, so they've got a beautiful romantic score. And Raise the Titanic. Raise the Titanic's like a notoriously. It's usually wheeled out as like one of those notoriously expensive bad films, but Barry's score just sends it over the top. These Body Heat's a great kind of jazz infused noir score. He's done so many films, so a lot of crap here. The stuff he just shouldn't be doing, and then he wins the Oscar for Out of Africa, and it's like Out of Africa, like how many people, when they think of Out of Africa, think of Meryl Streep or Robert Redford? Most people think of the music. Dances with Wolves, that was his last Oscar, and then after that he kind of tails off. This is quite a cool score for The Specialist as well. Actually rejected score for The Incredible as well. So they obviously wanted a James Bond style score, but it obviously wasn't right. So that's my number 3 choice. My number 2's is a guy who's done more scores than anyone else, and that's Ennio Morricone. Sadly passed away last year. This is again like where the key collaboration thing comes in. He's worked with Sergio Leone, they're kind of intertwined, and those Leone westerns are so much. They're amazing anyway, and I'm sure they'll always be great, but they're so much better because he's there. I think going back to what I said before is like when you think about John Barry's impact on James Bond, watch Dr. No and listen to the music, or watch GoldenEye, where the scores are fucking crap. And then watch the John Barry score from, and like Morricone. I mean, like I say, he's done horror films, he's done De Palma, any number of stuff. But I think he was the first guy other than the Bond films where I noticed the film music more so with Morricone. I think that's why I've put him above Barry. When I was growing up, spaghetti western scores were just as important to the film itself, and it all added to the aura of Clint Eastwood's characters or Eli Wallach's and so on. Too many numerous things to go on with Morricone, but massively experimental. A score like The Mission. He uses kind of music tech quite a bit, quite a modern sound for the Untouchables, using the distorted guitars, the harmonica on the spaghetti scores. Just an incredible 20th century into 21st century composer. I think that's what these guys are actually. They're modern composers. You got Bach, Beethoven, and so on. John Williams is still going to be having his stuff played, So my number 1, let's just go back through: Ron Goodwin, Pino Donaggio, Hans Zimmer, John Carpenter, Lalo Schifrin, Jerry Goldsmith, John Williams, John Barry, Morricone. These are kind of personal choices. I think some of these guys can't compete with some other guys I mentioned. It's just their music I enjoy. My number 1 is Bernard Herrmann. I think this is the key collaboration. I think when other filmmakers like Spielberg make a beeline for a certain composer, they're taking the leaf out of Hitchcock's book, and they know, they recognise the power of having that collaborator in their collaborative group, as it were, team. His music for Hitchcock's amazing. The standout scores for me are Vertigo, which is maybe the best score ever for a film, North by Northwest, Psycho, but also this Citizen Kane, which is amazing. Sadly, he kind of fell out with Hitchcock, and he actually did the score for Torn Curtain. If you watch Torn Curtain, the music's not that great, and there's actually Herman's rejected score. You can actually see the sequence. I have seen the sequence where they kill the guy by putting him in the gas oven, and it has it cut to Herman's score. And that's it shows like what he brought to that. Really, his Taxi Driver score, which was posthumously nominated for, is amazing. And again, unlike anything he'd done before, because he'd been in a lull, and he'd done a couple of interesting scores for like a couple of Hywell Bennett thrillers, Twisted Nerve and Endless Night. So he's kind of doing Brit films, and then Brian De Palma got him to do Sisters and Obsession, and Scorsese got him to do Taxi Driver. Incredible. Just looking at his scores, Day the Earth Stood Still. You think of Cape Fear as well. I think the thing with his scores as well, where he breaks from the other composers at that time write motifs, for characters sometimes. but his scores, not only did he just get character motifs like Max Cady's theme, but it suggests the psychology more, I think, and he suggests the emotion, the undercurrent of things more. And then he almost gets experimental, like Stravinsky, the Psycho, with the stabbing in the shower scene, and it's very atonal. And there's that opening Psycho film with the titles. There's not much melody there, but it's just got a thruster drive to it. It's not about being melodic. It's all about suggesting a mood. Really cool. I mean, Jason and the Argonauts, he did that. It's really cool. Marnie was his last Hitchcock score. Funnily enough, his first Hitchcock score was The Trouble with Harry. I would call that a third string Hitchcock. It's like a black comedy. It's probably better known for being Shirley MacLaine's debut film. It's got Blake Carrington in it, John Forsyth. He does The Wrong Man, which is slightly lesser known Hitchcock, but his other Hitchcock scores, Man Who Knew Too Much, where he actually plays himself as the conductor, and that predating John Barry. He did Larry Cohen's It's Alive, really interesting. He did Truffaut as well. Fahrenheit 451, that's a really interesting score. So yeah, Bernard Herrmann's, you're going to put on John Barry or John Williams or Morricone to kind of listen to his music. But when you want to watch the film with the images, I think Bernard Herrmann's the best film composer ever. And that's my top 10. Apologies again for those gaps and when I've been looking at the computer. I should have had that set up. But I hope you enjoyed that. Cheers.